the lack of proper action. And we get to crickets. That boot's going to come pretty soon. All we're going to hear is a bunch of crunching bodies. I really don't know what more to do about it. Kind of got to throw ourselves at this and not make any kind of excuse at all. And I don't know what else to say about that. That's just the way it is. It's not something I'm wishing on anybody, on us, and just imposing. There has to be a response. All this stuff that's coming, that they say is coming down, it's coming down in a planned way. This is not just like chaos and we're going to get through like some storm. This is the persistent storm. This is the perfect storm. This is the thing they're bringing down. The future we want. May have just found out who we was, and it made all the sense in the world when I saw it. Certainly somewhat of a bit of a conjecture, but it's interesting that things point together. Always seems to be things are nested. Always incestuous at some level, but also cyclic. So I was just on my bicycle there, man. Bicyclic. Just pedaling myself around, looking at things, how well they integrate. Very hard to distinguish coincidence with a meaning and coincidence without. One of the main coincidences I can see, it doesn't matter how many ways I look at it, there's so many more coincidences of occupation, oppression, tyranny, under the color of authority, color of good authority, I guess it should be. Because I see that we have a failure in us as people. It may not be the people I'm involved with. It may not be my friends, whether they be local to me or on the internet. All the kind of people I get involved with, I think are really great people. I think we could probably go to that utopia all by ourselves. I think it's a self-respect. It's an external respect. But the world isn't wired that way, apparently. I keep on bringing up that idea, when I saw Cain versus Abel, that pretty well told me what the nature of man was going to be, when brother could kill his brother. And here we are. We hear all the things going on, and we sit by and watch it. It's like we're a nation of deer in headlights. Oh, we have great intention, but we never really step up. And I've just noticed I told you this a long time ago, as I've been telling you all these things. It occurred to me after I found out how simple it was to address the government, and how I got involved with this was a traffic ticket that was wrongly imposed. And we all have that claim the cop will do. You were speeding and you weren't. Mine was a little more serious, but didn't amount to having 5 cops want to draw down on me. That was my first awakening of what you now hear is killed by cop, and all this nonsense that they've now given. You're more likely to be killed by a cop than a terrorist, or getting eaten by lightning, and struck by lightning, eaten by a shark, and you get eaten by lightning, right? And so my first interaction was being shown how easy it was to address the courts on a traffic ticket, and I realized that if everybody would just do that, just learn the basics on addressing even a traffic ticket, whether you won or you lost. Just the basics of writing a on-point letter. Don't go on and on. Just on point of what you find is not right in whatever officialdom comes after you. If everybody would just spend that little bit of time to do that, we probably wouldn't be here so quickly already. It just takes that. And if we all did it, we would gum the system up so bad. 2 things would probably happen. I know one thing, it would gum it up. It couldn't function. I know that. The other thing is that you would see how the government doesn't serve you in an obvious way, not in the way we avoid all the time, not in the excuses we make, not in the stories we tell, or the myths we create in ourselves of how we respond to this tyranny, this oppression against us, and try to go find other mythologies to go think would be better, and not lift a finger to even try and make those work. I've heard a lot of comments over my decades of looking at all this stuff. I'm a neophyte as much as any of you. I don't know. I'm just a little guy in the world who kind of innocent to it, and then realized that was all a big dupe. And so I turn my attentions on certain things. I started looking for anomalies in what they call the law and certainly the legal. I started finding limits. And then I started pushing those limits. I found creative ways to push those limits. I became an inventor that way. It's in us to do that. I can't really believe I'm an anomaly. I really can't. I have a hard time believing that. Most everybody I deal with around me has trouble dealing with the fact that they are powerful. And I keep thinking in my little pea brain, but I just read some stuff somewhere. I happen to make it important. I wasn't going to tolerate it no more, and I just started pushing back where I could. And there's a nice civil way to do it, they call it. They transferred the Civil War into Civil War paper. And boy, that made everything a little bit easier. It made it easier for them to hide the fact, but it also made it easier for us to continue. We can make mistakes. We can do all kinds of stuff and not have it really affect us. And then I learned how to really make shields of protection and records. And if people would just do that, we would gum this system up so bad they would be afraid to see us. Miners did that for a little while. They gathered up themselves together and they went in, wherever they went in numbers. Whether it was to a court to support another miner, whether it was to the council meetings and committee meetings, whether it was to make meetings with the council, the commission people, or any other official. They went in numbers and talked in a unified manner with the law. And the government was terrified of that. And I'm not talking thousands, I'm talking a dozen. It only takes a dozen or so. But it took that organization of unity. Everyone was independent, but they came together because they knew it was important. And we have to come to that. It's not my rule. It's not what I impose. It's not even my judgment. It's what has to happen. And I guess people don't like hearing that. I wasn't even going to talk about this. But here I am, as I do all the time. I got all my tabs and I go completely off a different thing. Just something that comes to me and I start to talk about it. And I don't know that I'm so wrong. I don't know that I've really ever been wrong, actually. Can't very well be wrong when I'm telling you the black and white that's out there that people just miss left and right. Can't be wrong on telling you what our experiences are, what my experience in particular has been. Again, there's no silver bullets. Maybe that's a scary thing for people. But we don't step up here. The future we want is not going to be your future, folks. It's right here. The plan is written. I don't know why it's that hard. The authority, the authorita that you see is a crime against you. It's become a crime. And again, people make up all these mythos about how this is the way it is, so we somehow give ourselves an excuse not to respond to it. Like our idea of what ought to be is better than what's going on against us. And I can't really talk too much about it, but let me tell you, I got some friends of mine, dear to me, that are making you see the wrong in the world, and you say, well, I'm going to strike out against it. And I don't know why it is, but it seems to be 100% of the time we all strike off in the wrong foot in the wrong direction. We don't identify that we are in an occupation, and multiple as far as I can tell. And we have to know the terrain of the battlefield. We just can't strike out with our moral compass. We're up against something that has none. It's an inert, inanimate structure that has people inside that are criminals. In some regard, you're defenseless to that, in some regard. But you're not when you come to terms with that. So, I'm going to get back over from off of that. I could be on and on. I spend lots of times telling people, trying to dissuade them from the direction, not what they found wrong, but how they wanted to go make it right, which was essentially to jump off the cliff immediately. Don't set them up. Don't learn how you have to respond. Don't learn what you need to respond with. Don't learn how to take what you know is the wrong and put it in a way that communicates to the occupier how that they cannot prevail. That is so important that people just lose. There's an almost universal absence of understanding about this, and I don't understand that because it's written down how. I've been talking a little bit about these presumptions. Apparently they're coming more, and I'm going to say again, you really need to look at the presumptions of law. The occupier has given themselves license to win before you get started. Yet, presumptions are rebuttable. That's the anomaly. That's the hole you go through. That's the only hole you have. And I'm going to tell you, it ends up being the universe when you understand how to use these anomalies in the law, in the legal. I don't care what you call it. I also don't care what you call your mythos about how you think utopia is going to be. I find a lot of people absent in the underpinnings of how we even got here. As corrupt as we are and as awesome as it could be, they are sitting there facing each other, and I see the world going down a track that I certainly wouldn't have wanted for myself, and I certainly don't want it for most of anybody. I mean, I guess there are some people that you just can't take that away from. They want to be doing they want to experience that thing in their life that way, and that's just the way that works. Can't really help anybody anyway, but you can kind of offer a little bit of guidance. You hope that they take reason. That's what I hope I've been doing, whether or not it's accepted, and all the people that may tune away and go away, maybe the guidance is not something you can hear or see. But the things where I've come from, how I've come to this point, have been substantial and foundational, and I think I have not found an evidence anywhere on what I do and what I explain to people that they need to do and show that says that I am giving people wrong information. And if I'm not giving wrong people information, and people are not taking that information to their advantage, they're wasting everybody's time. They become part of the problem as well. The crickets. Is what I have to offer a silver bullet? I've told you over and over. Nothing is a silver bullet when you're facing organized, syndicated crime. You just have to make your stand and then keep your risks down and still address it. Running through some conversation, somebody send a link all the way this information. The internet's a wonderful thing. A link to go to some young guy who found a document from the Forest Fish and Wildlife. It was a class, a PDF file he reduced it to for teaching their officers how the government's going to protect them, and they can do their job with the knowledge that they're pretty well protected, and no matter whatever they do. What did I say? Almost no matter whatever they do is the anomaly. So we go, look, what about the almost? And sure enough, in that document, they are teaching their supervisors that they are subject to an external authority other than what they see within the federal statutes. A different law enforcement authority. And right in there, you see the pain where they're teaching their supervisors and the federal government officials and employees that are otherwise protected. They are not protected against citizens' arrest, so-called, in quotes, citizens' arrest. And they are advised to do what the state law says in that condition. And they are subject to a citizen's arrest by use of force standards. And so when I see that, I had to laugh, literally laugh. Well, I remember I told you that we did a show cause to the Secretary of the Department of Interior. This is the oversight secretary of the originator of this teaching. We sent her a show cause that she was not committing felony and treason based on just 4 points that we submitted. And we said, if you don't show cause, we're going to arrest you for the felonies and treason you admit that you don't show cause you are not committing. And remember, I told you the next thing we got a call was from the law enforcement officer from the BLM. Completely felonious contact, but notwithstanding that, we are attempting to, we establish by their non-answer a criminality in the government. Which is, in a way, I told you, 18 U.S.C. 3 and 4 is our duty. Understand, we're doing something here. Yes, it's just in paper, but this is the way we get to do it. We're not sitting back making excuses. I now have a pain where the Department of Interior teaches their people that they're subject to citizens' arrest pursuant to state law. That's under no discretion by the government. That's no interpretation. That's no gray matter imposition that the government agents may put on the sheriffs or the state police or anybody. The people have the right of arrest. It's an alternative authority for law enforcement. And we get a call, not only from the Leo, but then from the FBI, saying that we are intimidating the government. Given that teaching system, that plate, that information they've already given, the Secretary of Interior has already given to its people, that they're subject to citizens' arrest, it clearly shows they know these people are criminal in the offices. And so, does that mean we get to arrest them? Sure does. Does it mean it's going to be easy? No. And so now we find the truth of it. These people that claim to be in the seats of decision of all this are not in the seats of decision. They're subject just like everybody else, just like the law actually says. If we weren't living in an occupied territory, we still have a duty to do to make the arrest. The guerrilla that showed up to beat its chest changes our battlefield subtly here that we have to deal with. But we press against. Can you imagine, folks, especially anybody that's a minor or a property owner or water property rights or patent holder, if they knew what they were talking about, if you just knew this stuff, if all of us would just know the fact of how to establish the wrong and have the probable cause to arrest, doesn't mean you have to be right, folks. It just means you have to have probable cause. Do you understand how the people in government would be looking over their shoulder at every turn? You fight every court case and you commit, if you're not in commerce, you commit the very first charge against them is fraud in order to gain the jurisdiction to charge you. That's a felony under color of law to do that. You realize, and you start, and I don't mean frivolous, I'm talking about learning how to do it more correctly. You have probable cause. These government officials know they're subject to the alternative authority of law enforcement. This is not a secret. If I had a doubt, it's vanquished by this document I was reading. Now, the way the video came down was the guy who was doing the research said, this is where they're explaining how these government officials can get out of liability through qualified immunity. In some cases, absolute immunity, which is a complete farce. As soon as you see absolute immunity, you know you don't live under a law of the land that respects everybody equally. But notwithstanding, qualified immunity. Very tough to get around qualified immunity, but you know what? It's an anomaly. It can be gotten, and I've told you I did it. I haven't told you behind the woodshed anything in action that I haven't done. I haven't told people to do and seen the reflection developed for people that needed a defense and avoidance that they put into place because I didn't need it. They needed it, so I gave it to what I could figure out, and these things work. You can pull them out of their office. They say very clearly they have to be functioning inside the office. Now, there's great extension to how that works for them. But it's still an ability. It's an anomaly that you go after. It's their Achilles heel. You develop your case. That's all you got. You just develop the record to give you the probable cause to believe you have the right to arrest for that. And their records say they have to submit to that and do what they're told under state law for that arrest, to the point of use of force, standards of the state. Guess what? These are felony arrests. They better not pull out a gun, and they better not have someone come to them, come in their defense with a gun. Do I like to hear that? No. Am I totally prepared to do that? Well, my mind says it is. Have I done one? No, but it was why we're not doing it is why we're here today. We never arrested these criminals that come under the color of authority and then beat us down. And they've risen to the top now. They have this. The way that worked was the rule of law, this foreign imposition that the Bar Association brought up that functions to decide and influence every aspect of anybody's thoughts or actions in most countries of the world that have accepted the rule of law and democracy. Now, you may hear the word democracy. I decide from an international specter, I step back and say, who's the power in the world? Is it nice or is it not nice? And if it's not nice, I have to deal in martial side, military, and the military power that has control is the one you have to look through. It's the one you have to speak to and by the methods established, otherwise they have the right to not listen. Why? They're the power. That reality proves you don't live in a country that you thought you lived in, no matter where you live. That should have caused everybody to take a step back, just like it has me, and decide, okay, that's the real battlefield. I just exposed the real reality, not the one I've been told, not the one I believe, not the one I make up because I can't deal with it. Instead of doing something, the real reality is we have a military consequence to everything that goes on, whether it's told to us or not. I've given you all the places to look to prove this out to yourself. That if you don't look from the military definition, you're going to miss a whole lot, and international military at that. That democracy is mob rule. It means you have no order or no peace. And we have been okay with that, apparently, and that's all the occupier has to worry about, is that you, the mass of the people, are okay with anything by any silence. Whether that's creating mythos, of making up your own definitional words, of putting in utopias that don't exist, ignoring it, hiding out in a hole, whatever you want to do that allows the mythos that you put in the world that isn't reality to exist, is the one that the actual power uses to not care about you, because you now have become ineffectual. You've cut yourself out of the herd. And we do have a herd, in a way. It's a society. It's the society we chose to come together, all of us, even the one that we were born into, that we continue to be a part of, that we have a certain way of life that we've agreed to, that we are protecting, such that we can. In this case, we have an idea of something that we ought to have protected that we didn't, and a lot of people took advantage of that. So give me back to what we need to be doing, and this is maybe opinion, but I know we have to have some kind of response, and since there's so many of us, we have and everything is in such a bad way. In other words, we probably have more time on our hands now than when we were working really, really hard, as they turn us into austerity, take away our means of making wealth, take away even our slave jobs, the employment relationship, our slavery, our voluntary slavery. Even as they take that down and move it down, I told you the Obama scare was to get 29-hour part-time jobs, so they cut out the full-timers, and then they were going to cut the 29 hours out as they move people out, and you're going to just be happy to have the 29 hours. Hasn't that happened over the last few years? And it's still happening. And it's going to be happening even more. We told you about the Detroitification. You don't step up and start speaking wherever you are in that case, it's going to happen. Look what's going on in Flint, Michigan water. There's a whole thing behind that one. I can sense it. I don't have the time to go find it. I'm going to do the same thing I did with the radiation. What you all blame on Fukushima I told you was in the United States, and they're just using that as a scapegoat to sneak you onto the idea that you've been living around it. All their technology, wherever you find a nuclear whatever, it has contamination, whether you know about it or not. But this is the same thing they're going to do with the Flint, Michigan water problem, as you're going to find more and more disastrous conditions in your water systems. That's not by accident. So we can all put our head in that bucket I need to make, that behind the woodshed, a bucket of sand. We can all do that. We certainly can. We can all do the equivalent, which is to talk, rant, wave our signs, and nothing more. And this thing is coming on us. It's coming on me. It'll become on me probably just enough. I don't think I'm going to squeak out with it before I see the last. I'll be getting the glimpse of how bad it's going for all the remainder. And I'll tell you one thing, and this has been weighing on me the last few, it always does, it's a cycle. What am I doing? How is this working out? What am I telling people? What are they not listening to? What are they listening to? Thank goodness we have some people contacting me and they do it, they get it, they know, they take the lead and they run and they go do what they can. But it's coming to a point when it may not be enough. And I don't know what else to say, but folks, don't let them do this to us. Have more respect for yourself than to create any excuse. That at least I'm going to be able to, if it, no matter how this all works out, and I don't know why this would even be important in the last moment, under the sadness of looking at a future that never wanted to change itself into something better, I will be able to go out of this place saying I did what I could. I didn't make an excuse, and I did what I could. Not what I did. See, I did on top of what I could to help everybody else that I could. And that's a sad consolation, but that's the only one I have for myself as I watch the destruction of this country and the world, actually. All peoples. I don't know where this comes from. This is so foreign to me to even think and talk about. All peoples are being destroyed. And it's because they won't step up. It's that simple. And so I'm feeling frustration again as I talk about it, going through the cycle of what am I doing and what am I not? How are we doing it? How can I do something? What's the next word? What am I not saying that gets people? What flicks that switch for this, the whole of all societies? I don't know what everybody listens to me, but what causes that tidal wave? I'm not that guy, apparently. One of you might be. But if we don't get this thing handled, you're seeing just look in the world and you see what you're seeing. It's not that hard to figure out. And it continues because no one stops it. No one figures out how to stop it. Some of that's a big deal, figuring that out. In other words, the lawsuit that we filed in 2013, I had to figure out. It took years to figure this out. Watching, again, I focused on something. Something came to me to keep focusing on. It was those anomalies. It was the things that even though there's complete tyranny, for some reason there's something they are subject to. And I found those places, and I kept watching them. And I kept watching how they tried to get around them. And I kept watching on things they couldn't get around. And I started making a list of those, at least mentally. By the time I got to the lawsuit, that all came out. And apparently I done good, folks. That's all I can tell you. I don't even know what more to think about. I must have done good. For anybody that may have a challenge to what I know or what I've done or it won't work or all these other, whatever you want to say, that part I know I done good. Why? Because people who have the power, people who should not be afraid, people who have all the other people, they have legions of people to answer what we did. Fell silent, folks. Now, if I can do that, I know lots and lots of you can too. I don't believe my friends and people that agree with me or people that can hear me can't do that. I'm not the anomaly, I don't think, because all I did was read and pay attention to a narrow set of things, but it was the things I needed to focus on. Why I started noticing way early on, like all the things I hear coming back up, regurgitating out of the 90s. I'm glad I went through that to see it. Now I'm glad I went through that now because it's coming back. And it was all completely wrong. It was like the disinfo of the time. And I saw that, and so I cut through even that. You have to also. Why I come here to tell you this stuff. I'm attempting. However I do it. However well or not well I do it. To inform you of the things to avoid and the things to focus on. This is not just me talking and wanting to hear myself talk and want you to hear me talk. Is that I'm telling you, we are in a bad way. It will not be fixed by talking amongst each other. I have to agree with John Statmiller, talking to him on the phone before I did the interview. And I think I mentioned this last week, and it rings so true. He goes, okay, we know what's wrong. What are we going to do about it? Absolutely. That's that seems to be ringing in my mind. I've been attempting to do what we've been doing about it, but I've been attempting to explain that because I'm beyond talking about it. I mentioned this news. In fact, I haven't got to the tabs yet. I mentioned this just to point things out that may pique your interest. I say this now every week, the same thing. Pique your interest and try something that just becomes the goo in the gears, the sticks in the spokes, the log that just won't get chipped. You become that part until enough logs show up. You just be that part until the rest show up. Because nothing is going to get us what we're watching. We're watching a bunch of people in Flint, Michigan, and now that we hear the kids are getting, they're showing up. They're showing up the kids. That's all Agenda 21. That's all they're showing you. It's all Agenda 21. I will not be, and I need to get onto the tabs because the stories I've wanted to tell you before are coming back to show you that's what they're going to do to you. In the water systems, they promoted to us a story I didn't get to about what a big company's doing to take sewage and bring it into fresh water. As I told you, this is coming down. Sustainable development will be, because they're after the water, is that you want to drink of water, you're going to have to flush the toilet. They keep promoting spacemen and how they have to deal with water and showers and then the technology in order to make these systems so they recycle the water. They're preparing your mind for what they're going to do here on spaceship Earth. Remember, in the 70s, they told us all this. And you know what? I've been looking. I can't find that that's valid, all that stuff. Oh yeah, it's spaceship Earth, but not the way they were saying it. Not the way it's going to be imposed. Not how you get driven into less than third world status. At least third world status people aren't promised they have fresh, good drinking water. And believe it. Oh, please. How far are we, folks? I mean, how far are we from really? I mean, I don't really, at that level, I have to laugh at myself expecting anything from most people. And yet that's not an excuse either, I don't think. And why am I even talking about this? I don't even know. I just know that lives are being hurt, just diminished. Myself, a producer, wanting to be one, having to stop my life. Literally, folks, I've stopped my life to address this problem. Now, I've got a little bit of an edge that I can do most of my life that way, but that doesn't mean that you are free to not where it's tough. And I've told you, I know they put all of us there so we can't. You really have to understand how these people know us better than we know ourselves. Absolutely. That's why I say pick something wrong you want to make right, even the smallest thing, and start to work to make that better and learn the process to get yourself in practice. As you know, you get practice in something gets easier, it gets faster. Like I was telling you, it's kind of a joke. I don't know how to type. To tell you the truth, I don't know how I type anything out. In fact, I get frustrated all the time because how badly I can't chat. I'm correcting it all the time. I can't type. I don't know what it is. And yet, I don't use that as an excuse. I get out what I need to get out. Thank you to all the word processor people that made programs that have spell check. Not that I can't spell, but they can spell it faster than I can while I'm trying to type it and not get it. Because I can't type. And I don't know what that is. There's just something in me. I can look down and type pretty quickly. I do faster with 2 fingers than I do with my hands. Figure that one out. I don't know what that is, but that's not an excuse for me. And the joke is, how do you get anything out? Well, I don't know, but I do. And it's the same type of problem I find with a lot of people that can't read. I say, don't let that be that excuse. Not that one, at least. And the depth of the control and the obstruction and the oppression is so much greater than all that. So it's almost like it's like I said, I can't look at the whole thing. I can look at the whole thing, but I don't want to. It's just too much. So I do what I can. Everyone needs to. But if we don't come up with all you're hearing coming down, however it comes down, and I really don't think it's going to come obvious, it's just going to be the long, slow grind for most of us. We're watching what's happening in the fast world over the fast controls over in the Europe and the Middle East. That's the fast response. That's how these people. That's how the power in the world rolls. They won't do that to the so-called first world nations. They're going to bring down. They're gonna get you. They've got you content. They got you absolutely deer in the headlights to what you need to do. And I don't know that it's really an answer more than I've seen that it works in numbers. Each one of you is powerful. I know I've been able, back to that lawsuit, see, I told you about the district ranger who tried to come against us in our mining claim, tried to shut us out, lock our gate, lock down a road, and I said, that's not within your job duty. Guess what? That's one of the things I was watching for in order for him to do. He needed to work outside of his job duty, outside of the scope of his authority. As soon as he touched the highways, he's outside the scope of his authority. Absolutely zero authority, and zero possibility of excuse that a federal DOJ attorney could be able to certify that he was in his scope of authority. I had to defeat that. And I did. I didn't do it. He did it, actually. I was just aware enough what the standard elements were in order to get him outside of that scope. And I moved them over into that as well. You can do that if you just engage. You just have to know, if we all knew what the target was, I think we'd be able to hit it. And I'm suggesting to you, I know it's technical or maybe not so tied up, and I don't quote lots of laws because it gets real tedious, but the principles I speak to, behind the woodshed, you gain your principles on how to go about doing that for yourself when you go to your laws and look, and your statutes and your rules and your codes and your contracts and all this stuff. All the same words come flying back out, all the principles all the same. You can just work from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, shifting the words of the same meanings, and it all works the same. That I know that we can do this en masse, and we need to. Each one of us has to make that decision. So, one thing that popped up, now that I'm getting to it, everything is presumed lawful that these usurpers do, these militaries do, these criminals do. That's the license they give themselves. It's like a generalized Title 50 for vaccines and doing tests on people and your environment, if it's for the public interest. And I think I heard Ron, as I said that, Ron Game On, he was talking to you a little bit about that on UCY an hour before this broadcast, a little hour and a half before. They use these terms that are not defined. You have to then go in and paper and define them, and when you find out they're not defined, then you find they're arbitrary and capricious. If you're on the administrative side, you nailed them on the administrative record. If not, then you go to the law side and you show them that they have no basis. Why don't you just go do that? Simple. That's a simple thing to do. Don't just talk about this stuff that when you hear from the hosts that are telling you on the ground, this is what they've done, this is what they find. Put that together for yourself. Look around your world. I'll bet there's something popped up somewhere that somebody did something you could use that. And that's what I get to the tabs. There's just something everywhere. It's a target-rich environment. This war is just absolutely available to prosecute in defense, pretty aggressively on our part, and be offensive, run an offensive. See, if you're an offense to a crime, you must be the good guy. So when they said you did an offense, and it's within a right, you can guarantee that's an offense to the system who wants to control you. Now, how do you turn that into saying that they didn't have a right in order to make that charge and claim? That takes a little bit of reading. That takes about putting two and two together. That actually takes doing a little bit of algebra that you'll learn as you go along when you start understanding how to read the statutes for what they're actually telling you instead of what you try to make up they're trying to tell you. Because some dictionary told you that the word meant something else. You don't understand the word, how they apply the rules for dictionary terms then. In fact, without knowing that, I wouldn't be able to be as certain and powerful to help people in mining notices. I would not be able to use that, as clearly understand that I was interpreting the code correctly to show people that the thing that the government puts on miner to ask permission to do that he's already granted is not available to the agency to do. because of term, definition, and statute. Not by what the words in the dictionary mean, but by how they are dictating to the agents of government how they're supposed to act to maintain inside the structure of acceptance of the military occupation. You can give it any name you want. It's not law. And I pose the guarantee that it's not law when the memo said they went extrajudicial. You can't go extrajudicial and expect there's three branches or three departments, however you want to define it, three departments of government. You can't believe you're in a constitutional Republican form of government. But the technique that they pulled it away from is pretty much the same how they did all that. That's identifiable. Part of it now is done in the presumptions. Now, they'll have all good reasons why the presumptions are sitting there, and I agree with a lot of what they say, but when you see that the system itself applies it to protect itself in its own, now you see the real reason. So, how do we get at these people that act in excess of their authority? But there has to be somebody somewhere that pops up and says, wait a minute, I'm going to challenge that. I'm going to challenge your authority. Now, nobody kind of goes over to where I say that this color of authority action to take away your rights is a felony. No one's doing that quite yet. That's okay. You might learn to do it. You might be doing it, or you might be able to tell people how that works. But right now we're limited to calling a guy out and arresting a problem. And how you do that is you make a court case, notwithstanding the corruption. And it's not going through and asking the government to check itself, because that's an oxymoron in its face. I told you, use this to expose, to make the record of the failure. We need more people to see it and not allow them to make the excuses they can go do something else. Just railing about how things are not working and how things are bad and don't you understand this and don't you understand that? Well, they don't care. Otherwise, they would be saying it themselves. Because once you see this, once you care enough to see it, then you start talking about it. And then if you go a little farther, then you try to organize how many you can talk about. And then if you go a little farther, and I guess I put myself into this next category, you actually work out tangible, on-the-ground things to do to keep forcing these people to be exposed as the criminals while you're waiting for other people to come do the same thing. And we're way beyond opinions here. We're way beyond misapplying the codes. I tell you, just go to their codes. Their codes will tell you how to address them. Just take one concept. I told you that the thing, I can't go into this one either, but we had a problem with the sheriff. His deputy wouldn't make an arrest that's authorized under the law for him and the mine owner. So we turned that around. The deputy says, well, your mining law is above my pay grade to understand. What did I do for the miner? They come to me and they said, what do we do? I said, well, the first thing you got a problem is forget the mining law now. Now you got a bunch of people that don't know, they're not trained. The respondent superior failure to adequately train is a cause, folks. So we turned the failure to understand the mining law and the statement that it's above my pay grade and the authority that the miner had to arrest, like everybody has, for a crime that they witness or they have probable cause to believe. We've now turned it completely outside of that into a question, making the record for and proving before we go that in fact this sheriff did not train his deputy adequately and caused harm. We moved the issue into a training failure. And guess what? Without writing a letter, we wouldn't get the proof to now find out the sheriff himself is incompetent in that stuff. Well, that wasn't a question, but we didn't want to make it an opinion, right? So we got the letters, came in. I've just sent the letter. The miner gets the letter. They said, what are we going to do with this? Well, okay, let me look at it. Well, right here in the second sentence, he's talking about discretion, interpretation. He had no interpretive right. His second letter talks about permits for miners, certain miners that don't need them. We got it on paper now, folks. Just a couple letters, pressing on point. A couple letters that the sheriff himself is incompetent. He has no training himself. What are we going to do with it? Well, I don't know. I'm just telling you, now we have more than beyond proof, more beyond evidence. It's not just my word against someone else. Is we got the proof, right, black and white, that we can continue to press and move. Now, if more people are doing this, I cannot believe, folks, it's beyond me to understand how You have to be completely senseless. That you would have a dozen, 2 dozen of these kinds of cases coming at you as a public official? How are you going to handle that? How are you going to handle that as that public official? You might be able to, and you might be able to be a psychopath and twist it out, but see those 10 or 12 cases that are not being handled right, exposing the truth of the failure and incompetence, work against that office as well. Hopefully someone picks it up and they go to recall, or the guy gets out of office next time he's elected. I know it's a slower way and it's maybe not ideal, but he's gone. In the meantime, you're looking for someone to replace him with that is competent. In other words, you go make them competent. We do that too. I'll find a commissioner that's interested, who really wants to do right but really doesn't have the right information, is really getting the wrong information from these bar members. And I don't mean my opinion, folks. This is all black and white stuff. Copy and paste. This is how really frustrating it gets to me. Now I'm going to get frustrated again. How copy and paste everything really is. You don't have to know much. You just have to know how to apply it. Remember, knowledge is not power. It's how you're applying your knowledge that's powerful. The commissioners that will ask, we absolutely give them my time. Friends that work with them, give them their time to inform them and make them a better decision maker and not be run down by the system of oppression. And yes, it's very slow, but there is some changing coming. The Burns thing, I was able to get a bit of contact, very tenuous. They haven't contacted me back. That may take time, I don't know, but I did get a word in. What did I offer? I offered a system of remedy to hand to the people of the county of Harney in order to take back, understand what's against them, and to keep it, to expel it from the county, and to get back to where the law requires these agencies to work as a tool set, as a method and remedy into the future. I haven't got a call back, so I can only hope they're really busy and they're thinking about it. I didn't do it out of my opinion. I did it out of things I can direct anybody to go find on the internet, that it sits there to prove out what there is. The people are not using tools in law, and they're allowing crime to go unarrested. Solve those 2 things, and most everywhere I've found, folks, some of you may have a contrary opinion. You can let me know. markonthebeast@yahoo.com. But you assert the law is being avoided and evaded by certain people, and then arrest them if it is. And I think things start to change pretty quickly. And do you know we can't even get that as a people right now? When you go to say, listen, and it doesn't mean we're going to stop. We just got to figure out how better to do it so we're not at risk. We don't need to do a risk that takes us out of the game. When we go to the supposed law enforcement and they're the criminals, you know you're sitting in a problem. And until you can get your accountability up, they have no reason to follow the law that's already there. And while I'm doing all this, I could care less about any other style of government, any other this or that, because we haven't got the one that we have the underpinnings already, the foundation laid for, working sufficiently to see where it failed. Oh yes, I'm not absent that we know it failed. They got us here, but it was because we were not vigilant and about that incursion. Again, we're back to our action. So, how do we stop the excesses? One thing you can do, and here it came up in the tabs, limits of presidential power to be determined by the Supreme Court ruling on Obama's use of executive orders. Now, I've been on the record to tell you that it only applies to his cabinet, it only applies to the executive side, and only within the constraints of his office. That's going to be determined right here. This case, someone brought this case up. May not have been any of you and me that could do this. I don't know, but it got brought up. It was an example for me to tell you. This is how you check the excesses or the perceived excesses of anyone. You don't necessarily have to go to the Supreme Court, but this shows you this is a hot potato that no one really wanted to make the answer on. And it's a fundamental question to the existence and establishment of the structure. Whether or not the occupier will allow itself to take license to extend a colorable right underneath the Constitution is yet to be seen on this. But until you bring the question The Supreme Court, or any whoever makes the decision, whether it's a code officer or an ethics officer overlooking at the code officer, or the whatever agencies overlooking the operations of an employee, a certification board, a licensing board for these officials that have to do this, or not have to, they're doing it because they're the occupier. Until you write the question correctly, succinctly, and persist, we don't get the question. We only get it now. This should have been in the limits of executive orders should have been settled a long time ago. It took this long. Now the occupier uses this delay of justice, which is injustice. Delay and this is the best we can do excuse in order to continue the plunder. That's why I say the more people involved, the faster these things get thrown into the mix, and the more they're going to have to deal with it. They can't think that fast. They can't think of how they can integrate this fast. And if they get backlogged too much, then it shows the people start rattling the cages of injustice. A lot of people say, well, that doesn't matter. I mean, who cares? What good's that going to do? Have you tried it? Have you worked to try and get enough people to do this? Now, I've been doing this, how long? Trying to get enough people to do it. How many do we have? Sadly, very, very, very few. And even so, that small little contingent working beneath the skin is causing a lot of shifting going on, and in the right direction. So I'm encouraged, even in the small amount that do come forward. That's why don't look at the next guy to do something. Don't look at the excuse. Decide for yourself, folks. So the United States Supreme Court challenged the president, or the unqualified ones, on immigration policies could have an impact far beyond determining whether millions of undocumented immigrants can remain in the country. The case has the potential to constrain the power of Obama's successor to bypass Congress and act alone. No, this will constrain his power, and it constrains the office to its lawful actions. It doesn't actually constrain the power. This is the calling out of an excess of power. The power is established. They may have this executive order, but it's extended beyond its lawful capacity and delegation of authority. Remember, executive is over the functions of legitimate government, not over diktat of your life. And so this is how you bring the question. Does this guy have the power that he's been wielding over immigration? I could care less about the fact that it's immigration, but they said, here's the point, they said it's far-reaching. Yes, this is a broad-spectrum case. You have the choice to pick those types of cases. Should Obama's order blocking deportations for certain immigrants be invalidated by the justices, the decision could hamper future presidents' ability to craft policy through executive fiat, legal experts told Reuters. Legal experts say, folks. Why is Reuters referring to legal experts? Well, why don't they just go to prior case law that says that there's a definite limit to the powers? Why aren't we seeing the Congress suing the executive branch for excesses directly? They have the inherent power, cross-branch, to stop this. Well, to me, that just shows you the government doesn't intend. And they're foisting all this on you to do. And again, it's a notice that you shall have to. Do I like saying that? No. Is it my guess or wish for you? No, absolutely not. But this is what happens when tyranny rules. Whatever color of authority it wants to present to you. However, whatever excuse it wants to use, like this sheriff, it's up to the laws are up to the interpretation. Well, guess what? He's a legislative officer over the interpretation's a judiciary. He just cross-branch breached, didn't he? I get to tell them that, don't I? There's no interpretation on laws that in the statutes themselves the occupier tells you speak for themselves. In other words, they're clearly written to be understood. If they're not, that's a violation, first of all. Secondly, then you're not interpreting correctly. And so when you get to the point when you see clearly what they're talking about, then you're inside what they mean. There's no interpretational problem here. So this is an evasion. That's another felony. So this is how you dismantle these things. But you're not going to do it by your opinion. You have to wait till they commit a condition, and you have to request that. And the presumptions work against you. So you got to go look at that list of presumptions and say, I got to defeat these things. I got to defeat the presumption that their acts were lawful. I got to defeat the presumption that the law they're relying on is lawful. I got to, in other words, he just went up against the law that said that the acts speak for themselves. He has no proof of that. It's not that way. So he's got the presumption that I can use against him. And he's a law officer. He took an oath to do this. So he's got an even higher standard to meet. You just lay this out, simple statements. It's not that hard. You just lay out your case. So someone laid out the case that these immigration decisions were beyond his authority. And it finally went to the Supreme Court, and we're going to find out. And this will be a far-reaching well, to me, it's not far-reaching, because when you learn how to read executive orders and you realize it's only in the cabinet and the parties in the cabinet, and then by extension their delegations, you realize it can't extend outside of the federal government's own administration. What people don't understand is that that's the limit, and so they take it on like it's real, like it's actual law. And so this is an important case because the people have forgot the limit. And so I guess we need that limit told by these justices who are foreign to us. So we gave this question over, instead of enforcing it in the beginning, we gave this question over to a party branch that's part of the usurpation. Now, we hope that they give us a decent rendering. Why? Their decision is going to be based on how much you know about how invalid that is and how much stink you're going to make as an occupied people, as the natives getting restless. That's the determinations, it seems, as the way I've seen it. You can have any other decision that you want about it. Bottom line of all, it doesn't matter what our opinion is what's the day going to be, what's the reality of the day on how this works. And so, to me, I've realized a long time ago, my opinion on lots of stuff really is irrelevant. My differences with people about our opinions is certainly irrelevant. The best we can do is to gather the information we didn't know from each other that is relevant, pertinent, and material, just like the rule of evidence says, to the matter at hand. As you look at this illusion that they put in is actually an ongoing court case. You got to have the evidence against these people, not your opinion, not your beliefs, not a fabricated existence, not an existence you'd rather be living that don't. See, you can't stand on their wrongdoing as your defense, because you're sitting in a position of obligation and duty, even though you don't want to agree to that. You have to really understand the reality of this. Now, I guess there could be different realities, and I guess some people do get along. They don't say much. They keep their head down, and that's good enough for them. And I guess that is good enough because it worked out for them. It's their life, right? I guess I've taken a different path. Maybe those of us that take this path, there's not that many of us. I don't know. But if you have a sense of being a free people, you can't do it on what you look at as the reality. When you started seeing things not add up to what your expectations were and to what you thought common language said, that should have been your clue to call to arms. And I don't mean the arms in the Second Amendment. I mean call to arms of alert and action to find out exactly and then stop whatever was in excess. So that was the way. Here it went. If you wanted, all you all that had an immigration problem, so-called conservatives and all that, all you whatever, I don't know who you are all. I think it's wrapped up in the conservative issue. You ought to all have had a lawsuit flying about the excesses of these orders that these agents of the government are operating under. It's not that hard. Remember, it's not much different in that regard as an administrative hearing that you conduct to find out the extent of the authority and the delegations on the administrative side. You can do that's the soft way to do it. You don't have to go to the courts that are all corrupt. You get the record before you go into the courts that it's all messed up. Just like I got these two letters handed to me and said, well, what we got to do with this? Well, look at I can't even get down past the second sentence. I've got a week's worth of dialogue just on the second sentence. Where is that in us that we don't do that? I'm just saying, you got to get that in you, or else any idea that you have of seeing a better world for whomever is around you, or maybe those that you care for in the world. They're just people in the world, like all the people I don't know, the millions that are dying. I don't know any of those people. They don't mean nothing to me, actually. In one regard, zero. I got zero connection, but they matter somehow. It matters that some little girl says, I'd eat dirt to go back home in Syria. It matters to me. I'd go home, a little boy, I'd go home if you just stop bombing it. And partly I think I know I'm caring because I know that's us too. Just different. But the distinction without a difference in a large part. So this Obama character, he's been running all kinds of scams and schemes, and they're got to be tested and challenged. They should have been challenged as soon as he got into office, but nobody did. Yours truly, if I can say that, I don't even know what that means, to tell you the truth. But anyway, myself, me, I didn't do that. I told you all, I got other things we had. I was focused on other things. I told you that. I haven't done nothing. I had to make a choice. It's that or this, and I decided this other thing. And I think we done good. I tell you, folks, we done good. If it's never, ever recognized, I know we done good. We rolled up a flag so large it covered the country with a shadow, and nobody noticed how blind we are as a people. Fascinating. But that's okay. I don't know what else to do about that. We done good. We done what we could, and we're going to do more. And no one will notice. Maybe no one will notice. Now, I've got to come to terms with that because I'm wondering where my life goes too. If it's all going to be for naught, well, what am I wasting my time for? But that's not a question I delve in too far. That seems to be an excuse position. At least that's the way I do. I say that so I can keep it at a distance. So this Obama character is through the executive branch is doing all kinds of stuff. His DOJ does all kinds of stuff, and it's never challenged. And then we hear that a long time ago, this Fast and Furious came out. I'm not going to get into all. I'm just going to read a little report here. Well, all this gun running is going on, and they want to come after your self-defense rights. Why? Well, because they're the occupier. That should give you a clue. Tying it all together, the rifle lost during Fast and Furious is found in El Capo's or Chapo's hideout. I think the H is silent, but I'm not sure. I can't remember now. El Capo. Just when you thought the surreal story surrounding Mexican drug lord Joaquin El Capo Guzman second capture couldn't get any more bizarre. Yes, he was captured again. They found him. Remember, that was Tunnel Man. Little motorcycle rider inside his tunnel. Got out. Fascinating. Lots of governments do that too. I think that's right. That's what struck me. Solomon called up. I think I was able to hear his call on a replay on the file podcast of Freakers Ball, and he mentioned that all these places are have all these tunnels, and reminds us that there's a whole lot going on with when they put an embassy and consulate in. And I may adjust. We'll talk with that in a second. Maybe I should just talk about it now so I don't forget about it. Just want to point out about Benghazi. Never forget. I'm only addressing. Solomon talks on Friday's Freakers Ball. He talks about the fact that Benghazi was a false flag. I'm not speaking that far. In one regard, I could care less what it actually was. I agree, though. It wasn't. It isn't what we're told. And all that became non-important to me after 9/11. When I told you, I looked at the falling towers and said they went and done it. See, they proved that they could do extraordinary things and get away with it. And so now that was the new rule. That now we're just looking for the sign. We don't need to know whether or not it's actual or fabricated or for what purpose. We know the United States now is willing to make self-inflicted wounds, and lots of governments are as well, in order to advance whatever the cause is for whatever the purpose is decided by the psychopaths in power. So I just wanted to point out here, I was not going any farther, because the question was at the time, and still is in some regard, and they blamed it on Hillary. And I'm not a fan of Hillary, but it doesn't matter. We want to go see who actually had the cause. Because if you understand, it's not Hillary, it wasn't the State Department, that it was in fact the unqualified one that allowed it. Anybody hearing that, I think, can come to the conclusion they don't need to know more either. It's nice to know that it's a false flag. It might be nice to know it was a setup, a self-inflicted wound for some other purpose. But at some point, your principle can stop when you find out the unqualified one let armed forces people die. Not to underwrite the fact of what they were there for, or even under fact being in war, because I don't think any of it is legitimate at any point outside our own defending our own territory as a nation. I'm pointing out only that my source was pointing out to find out who done it. It wasn't other than the president, the commander-in-chief, actually. And that you have to we don't have to, but I would say you can't forget that. You have to listen to that, because that's your command, a so-called commander-in-chief of a nation, finding soldiers or fodder, not defending the territory. And I don't know, for me, I don't need to go much farther with it. So I just wanted to clarify. I am not saying the source was saying what it was for. It was just to identify the protocol that was in place looked like it had been violated or had a failure in it, because people were not supposed to die. And they did. And so there was a check to see what failed in the protocol, and then they came to the conclusion, well, no, the protocol's right, and the only one that has the power to stop that is one guy, and not everybody else that was being blamed. So appreciate the input, Solomon, on that, and just wanted to say that I'm limiting that discussion for the purposes of identifying the perpetrator. What the reason was for it, the mens rea behind all that, I don't know. And to me, I really don't have, my mind is to the point where once I see the criminal act, I really don't know why. I care why. I mean, yeah, it's important to know because it just reminds us of how brutal and how corrupt these people in power, in positions of power are. That's important. I don't deny that. So, again, I don't think we have a disagreement on a lot of this. It's just, and the long distance, I'm speaking to Solomon now, the long distance and time differential is a little, not so difficult, but little awkward. So anyway, I appreciate what you bring to the Freakers Ball, and I ask people to go listen to Freakers Ball and Solomon's input. He's got a whole different set of ways to kind of look at as I speak about the power, the stepping back and seeing the global power as a military force. He's in concurrence with that and deeper. He goes deeper than that. I tend to want to deal with the things I can show in paper, and so I stick there because that keeps everybody. The more esoteric interpretations are there, but that becomes the fodder for division, and I try to stay a lot away from that as well. But although it's fascinating, and I have delved in it a bit, maybe you can hear that a bit. Probably gave me a little bit of insight, but I don't focus on that. But that's enough here. So it's again to identify who done it, folks. This unqualified one, the same guy that's willing to extend his jurisdiction about immigration, which we know is all part of Agenda 2030, the plan which brings sustainable development. He's also willing to do Fast and Furious, which hands to drug dealers, drug cartel in the war on drugs, heavy weaponry, and showing again the war on drugs is a fiction. When are we going to step up against that? The evidence of which is calling marijuana having no medical use, and we know now it has plenty. So looking at the fictions, pick one, folks, attack it. Make the record, learn how to address it, and attack it step by step. Don't watch this stuff come on us like this. Don't let it really, it is destroying us. And all the people in Flint, there's rally, complain. It takes I can't go down and stop something. I can't go start an action. I can't go get these guys involved. I can't go order a judge to stop the intakes and change them back to where they were. What? Yes, certainly I can. Especially now with all the evidence, the EPA fraud that's down there in Flint. Why do people accept that? Why do they accept that they're helpless and they can't move a simple remedy in the courts? When did that become beyond us? Now, I understand the reality of it all, but that's not an excuse either. There's enough people saying, how'd you do that? And they get to do it too. The government has to take notice. It's like your vote. They can disregard your vote, your electoral vote, your political vote. They can't disregard your vote on your piss-offedness, I guess. They can't disregard that. And when you understand this dynamic, you'll understand how to become a lot more powerful, I think, because I think that's what you'll find underneath all this. So all this money, drug money, all these valuables, all this stuff going on, all these decisions on the executive side, and then I get this little story coming in. The judge rejects marathon bomber's bid for new trial, orders $100 million in restitution. And I laughed. How's this kid, I don't know, what is he, 20, 19, 21, whatever, how old is he? Where's he going to get $100 million? That judgment alone is a joke to show you the court system is absolutely out of whack. They allow all this, they watch, as a judicial branch, they watch all this executive branch criminality. And then they come in on the judicial side and order a ridiculous sum. Who's going to pay $100 million, folks? When you see that, though, when you know something about, if those of you that came through the 90s and heard something about redemption, and you start hearing about, this is where all this information about their birth certificates now come, and everyone wants to make a big deal with it, even though no one wants to listen to me that says, so far, I've never had to use my birth certificate to show my existence was valid, for the government to pigeonhole me into some place. But that's not relevant. Now, it might be there, it might be true, and I don't discount it, I don't dismiss it, but it's not relevant to certain things. But when that redemption kind of condition came through, and there was major errors in that, major big chunks of chain missing in the link chains you needed to make go from one end of that decision to the next. This starts to trip me up into saying, well, now, how did they validate that this guy who was not in an enterprise to be able to make this money could pay a restitution of $100 million? The governor of Oregon complains $100,000 a day is going out because of Ammon Bundy. He was in front of the FBI. I just saw the video last night. Thank you, Juana Taco. Thank you for transcribing that section of that document too. I wanted to thank you for you took out of there that document, that training document. Maybe you can repost that for people in the RLM chat about what that pain says about citizens arrest and that their government's subject to that. The federal government employees are subject to that. How is this that the Ammon Bundy could be in front of the FBI and he doesn't get arrested, folks? There's no grounds for arrest. That the governor complains $100,000 a day is being spent on something Ammon's doing, which is not criminal. And that's actionable to get the FBI to come swooping in, she says. Even though that shows she has no power in her office. People, you got to look at this. It's explaining the non-existence of constitutional government right there. And nobody crickets. But how is this $100 million even sane? Where is this money? Where they make this stuff up, right? It's only can be because of there's an underlying condition. I'm not going to go through all that. I'm just suggesting to you, where is someone who's not in commerce, not subject to what they're doing, didn't actually do something that was underneath to try and change the political will of the people. It was not directed like that at all. If he did it, where do they justify $100 million in restitution? In fact, he's going to be on an accelerated course to be put to death, it sounds like. Where are they going to get that from the dead body? Unless there might be, just very well might be, some thread of truth about the power, the value that you are as chattel, as the paperwork they create underneath your name, and they bond, and then they put money on the bond, they create more derivative from the bond. How much value are they putting to float the debt of this nation on your back by your promise to pay? That the bean counters are working to the point that against his bond, whatever that is, he can pay, the bean counters can move $100 million when they kill him. And it's theorized into some judges' retirement accounts as a percentage of the take, if you didn't think this is a bank operation. So, just a little insight. I thought the whole thing was this $100 million restitution. How's this kid going to pay it, and how are you going to get it out of a dead body? Even if he was not dead and put in jail, how are you going to get it out? What is he going to sell his? How much can he sell the cigarettes he don't have? What's he going to have to do to get that kind of money in jail? Shows you the big disconnect. It's a big lesson. Gives you an indication there was something underneath the valuation principles in this country that this country actually runs on that they don't tell many people about. We got a little insight to some of this real potential here back in the 90s as well, coming into the 2000s. It's something I didn't go down because there was too many big links missing, but there was proofs enough. There was enough facts in the world, in the law, to see there was something there. In fact, some of this information you can use back, if you know what you're doing, to go after financial plunder, whether or not you volunteered into it or not. But another thing, and I won't tell people how to do that because there's some, I think, ethical and moral implications about all this, and there is no silver bullets. And it's like, for myself, it's like I see myself handing you, as a child in that, a gun, and you're going to shoot yourself. It happens over and over again. In the past, I stopped doing it. There's a way you can learn this stuff. There's a thing to do about it, and the truth sits right in there. And these people, these stories tell us there's something else going on that we're not privy to. It's when I tell you that we've done everything on since 33 or so on a promise, and you see nothing. There's no actual value that's been done except for you believing, you as a society believing that you were getting paid. Look at what you all done. Look at the magnificence that you've all built since 1933, and look at all the destruction you've caused since 1933. That's done on a promise, vapor, folks. That's the thin air that everyone complains about. Otherwise, the government is not printing out of thin air. It's printing on your back, the valuation of which may be part of this judgment as against harm on other people. Now, they're not going to get all that, actually. The kid dies, he dies, but you know that death certificate's going to go in, and if there's a monetization of the birth certificate, notwithstanding its lack of use everywhere until you get to the end, they're going to monetize that death certificate for $100 million. How much do they do that? On top of coming into the estate, the state takes half, remember, to the estate. You know, someone's keeping track of all this stuff. So along the lines of this birth certificate idea, and everyone gets all wrapped up around all this, but doesn't understand it has its place in its time, and it's not in most of what you do, but that's okay. You can believe what you want. You can get all wrapped up in the wrong direction and go in the wrong and take the time it takes to waste your time. We can do all that. I'm asking you, notice it's there, but maybe that's not where this late in the game, this late in the race, we need to focus. And that's not getting us anywhere right now. But I found it very fascinating. Rand Paul introduces a bill to give unborn children constitutional rights on 2 points here. One is they want to monetize people so bad they're trying to go into the womb to do so. And then this guy is completely absent of why they can't make children out of the unborn. Think about the words here. Unborn. Now, you've heard the connection between born and corporations are born, folks. Now, you've heard the extension, they're on the sea at Admiralty and on the deck, all this nonsense they come up with as a story for you to get you to believe. I guess you can believe all that. I guess you could attribute some truth to it if you stay in that and then don't make it a big deal. Just understand that's the fairy tale they get us to understand there is something going on in this. Unborn children. Unborn wards of the state is an oxymoron. That's the problem. And give them constitutional rights. Well, who is he to give them constitutional rights? This guy's out to lunch to start with. But I find this very interesting because this is how it starts to get people to believe it's possible. The mother and the unborn is one unit. I've told you about this. They also have an industry that's made about the unborn up until born and right before it. They can't interrupt that. So he's not getting that either in his suggestion. But you can't be a ward of the state and not be here yet. And that's the decision the Supreme Court's been made. And so these guys put out this pablum like they're doing something. And in fact, it's an impossibility in the current construct. It's also an impossibility in the construct of law. And why are they in the womb anyway? Where is that written in the constitutions? All of them. So, we can go, again, I could go through some analysis. I don't know why. You either get this, you either get it, and you can use it. You can send this guy a letter and say, get off the stage. Get off the stage of life. Quit passing bad statements out there for people to consume. Why don't you say something that's valid? How about you jump in on the Ammon Bundy thing and say, oh, yeah, you're right. This thing was stolen from the people. You're right. Congress is not upholding its obligations and duties underneath its contracts, and neither is the state. I'm going to pass a law for accountability. No, children, helpless children. Sustainable Development Agenda 21. We got to help the children, and they're not children, but they can be monetized, right, as a fiction, can't they? Can you imagine all the bodies that they would get to start monetizing? And he plants the seed that it's possible, which is the bigger crime here. See, if the government doesn't have, you don't have to extend constitutional rights to the unborn if you give the mother all the rights she needs. And don't intrude at all. Leave her alone. Leave the father alone. Let them be a family. If you aren't imposing your violence, you don't need to make a restriction against it, do you? These are just, he agrees to the violence then, doesn't he? You're getting that, right? I mean, I just had that question. Am I going like too fast, or is this something that's not thought of, or is it out of line? I mean, this is what they're telling us. Is the way I see this. This guy doesn't care about you. If he did, he would be fighting against the reason why he has to think he has to give somebody rights that's in the womb. And he's really speaking about the mother. You could care less about the mother here. No, let's have Obamacare do it and tear their family down and make them live on nothing. Allow the husband to not work in a tree-infested forest because the USFS, who issues the food stamps, won't let them harvest the trees like the law says. Oh, let that crime go on. Anyway, enough here. Monetization of people, folks, is an actual thing. I don't get into it too much because it's not really something that I've been able to find to actually do something with. I use the theories a wholly different way, and it accomplishes pretty much the same thing. I just don't go asking for the billions that are in the accounts supposedly that they claim that are sitting there. That gets to the stupid side. Again, you touch money, you're going to touch the beast. You got to learn not to touch the money. Don't be greedy. Just go after what you need in your life, which is to be left alone. And that's it. So if I'm left alone, the government constrains itself to its lawful objectives, which is really not very much actually, is to regulate life amongst us so it's peaceful, then I shouldn't have to have a protection against the violence admitted by this kind of an assertion. And the violence is asserted because there's money, the plunder to be done, right? That's why people go. That's why I've been trying to insinuate to you all. It seems that we want to live in peace, but we're always being attacked by somebody. Why? Because they think they have something they can come and get from us. That's a value of some sort. This is what the value behind everything that's going to come and be stolen from somebody. These laws were set up in order to make the distinction on what was the objective basis for that, not be a theft. I mean, how you can identify it as a theft. And these people that came in to do this have done non-constitutional impositions that you've all agreed. That's the consent part. So these people are going on a world stage. They've monetized you all at some level, somehow, some mechanism. We got little bits of it, haven't quite got all of it. And, remember I was talking about Agenda 20 from annual meeting as a title on this tab, this webpage tab. We Forum. Wow, look at that. WeForum.org, World Economic Forum Annual Meeting. And as soon as I saw that, World Economic, that's the future we want. This is the world economics we want, isn't it, in their Agenda 2030. I told you the whole thing about sustainable development is global financial servitude. It's global debt slavery. So what happens when there's supposed to be a World Economic Forum for peace? You know that's an impossibility by Agenda 2030 by its very statement when they talk about using migration. And so this whole lie develops. The Davos devils are now in their coven, scheming and scamming and spelling. And yet they can't even get together in a peaceful economic sense, as we find out exclusive Saudi Iranian proxy war over Syria spreads to Davos. So what are we doing here? There's a big other war starting up, folks, with Saudi Arabia and Iran. The proxy war has been going on. There's been proxy wars all over the place. It's not unique to the United States. What's insultive and damning about the United States being involved in Syria is that they're there at all. And they're not telling us why, so it looks like a big crime. And I still can't understand. I can't find a reason why anyway. But there's a lot of people that don't like each other over in the Middle East anyway, and I guess that's what they're exploiting, isn't it? But senior Saudi and Iranian figures clashed behind closed doors at a private meeting convened by the WE Forum at Davos this week to try, the World Economic Forum in Davos this week, to try to promote peace in Syria. The barbed exchange between Saudi Prince Turki al-Faisal and Iranian Foreign Minister Javad Zarif at an invitation-only meeting. I missed that the first time I read through. These were invited there. Interesting. On Wednesday, underlined the hostility between the two Gulf rivals who are waging proxy wars in Syria, Yemen, and Iraq. And so, we have in the WE Forum in Davos, people can't even get along. What's your chances of a peaceful life, folks? You can't be crickets on this. See, these people mean you harm. I don't care how you want to look away or what you call it or what you don't or how you dismiss it. It doesn't matter where you go. These people are psychopaths. They can't get along. It's about economics. They know it, and they can't even make peace in the economics because economics is not peace. Economics is war. There's a whole theory about if we hadn't had valuation of money, we would be a more peaceful group of people, societally. And then they started to twist what that value was as well. When the weight and measure was brought in to try and stabilize all this, the first thing they attempted to do, it took them quite a while, was to remove the weight and measure, which is the money, which we could at least have a weight and measure of our value that we could transfer over time to each other. And they removed that, and we were crickets. Apparently Charles de Gaulle didn't like it. He was a big stick in somebody's eye when he was alive in the United States. That was maybe the most powerful thing the French could do, was to oppose the removal of weight and measure. And when we remove the weight and measure, you're no longer under a constitutional form of government, it would seem to me. And no one said anything. Who knew, right? But here we know, we're coming. But they drive this whole thing by the, get the Saudis with all the oil. They're having a problem right now because the price goes down. But then I find this is very interesting, that this is not even about value. It's about what you need, and this is how they control you. Remember, production and consumption. The Saudis are trying to do the production of oil, and they tried the OPEC and all that nonsense. And the Iranian is coming online now, right? They're coming online. You think they don't have a big fight about that alone? How can that be peaceful? With Iran coming on with a bunch of new oil and gas, and actually can get their gas to places that other people can't. But it jumps it on over here, boing, to the United States of America. North Dakota crude oil that's worth almost nothing. Fascinating things that go on. Oil is so plentiful and cheap in the United States. Now, I challenge everybody to go down and see if they can find a quarter gasoline, but let's talk about the crude oil. Crude oil is so cheap in the United States that at least one buyer says it would pay almost nothing to take a certain type of low-quality crude. Flint Hills Resource LLC, the refining arm of billionaire brothers Charles and David Koch, whatever the heck, Industrial Empire, said it offered to pay $1.50 a barrel Friday for North Dakota sour, a high sulfur grade of crude, according to corrected lists of posts on the website. They had made an error, but they were willing to pay someone to take it, 50 cents a barrel. While the near zero price is due to lack of pipeline capacity for the particular variety of ultra-low quality crude, it underscores how dire things are in the United States oil patch. But let's get to the point. They're willing, this crude, they make enough money that they can sell this, they can pay someone to take away like garbage, like refuse, like the garbage man comes. Only this time it comes in tanker trucks. And they will pay someone to take it because they make more money on another thing. To show you how cheap this stuff is and how much money they're making. they can get it down to where part of the product of the oil can actually be paid as a refuse. And there's someone in the world to pick it up, to make something else with it. Now, this should, to me, that kind of meant my mind was tossing all over the place when we heard about $140 a barrel oil. See, the fix is in. This is all used. This economic weapon is used against you. We create everything on nothing, folks. I keep telling you this. It's on a promise. So ultimately, everybody knows there's really no value here. You make this stuff up, but they have to have some kind of a transfer between the value of everybody so that everyone does it, so someone doesn't get slammed down too hard. You can continue making industry to provide for the needs of the people. So here's the production side being so cheap. Are you getting the benefit of this? No, but this is where it's at. Certain quality crude is so cheap that it's now garbage. It's refuse. I find that pretty fascinating when you have all kinds of people that are having trouble with economics. How are we doing it when we can pass stuff off for nothing or pay them? Industry has the money to do that. How is that? If you thought money was real value, I mean, what we see as money is real. These little stories tell us that the Matrix is not a movie. The Matrix is not a movie. The Matrix is not a movie. It's whatever they get you to believe it is. And then try to unplug. You start to see more of the reality. And just like we found out, we unplugged and said, hey, you're a criminal, Secretary of Department of Interior. And the Centurion was sent out after us. Thing is, we had some battle shields up, so it went away. And so here we have the World Economic Forum of Peace. They're fighting over there between Iran and Saudi Arabia because they're both on the one's on the ropes with the money that they keep spending of making war with everybody. The other one's coming online to put more oil into the system, and they're giving it away in the United States. Certain qualities. What's the wars for? And again, they're tools. You find that these are just tools. And this comes, folks, these battles come. Iran complies with the nuclear deal. Sanctions are lifted. Fantastic. Fantastic. Great. They're not going to go into nuclear power. So then they got their missiles they're going to start. Okay, we need to be defense. We need to have a defense against the allegations of the declarations of other countries. And so we're going to have a missile system. And we got technology now that's pretty superior. Maybe being given some help from Russia. We're going to make some missiles now to protect ourselves. So the sanctions, $100 billion is now opened up back to for the people, the Iranians, to go grab back up. There was stuff stolen from them a decade ago. They get to put it back into play. They're going to move it into something called SWIFT. I can't remember. I was looking at some of how this works. What do you do with $100 billion that was stolen from you for 10 years? Wow. And all that legal blockade's been now lifted, and then they're going to go to task on working with $100 billion, and they've had ministers and people and officers and all kinds of people working on it for quite a long time to make sure when this thing got lifted, they would be moving money. They move it to where they need it. Business of doing business, you know. Iran does what it's told, what it agrees to. Remember that deal that the unqualified one did that was no really viewed by many people as being no good. I could care less. We shouldn't have been over there anyway. We had no business doing that. Iran does it anyway. They have a deal they can work. They do the deal. The nuclear deal is fulfilled, and the sanctions are lifted. And what does the bully of the United States do again? Immediately. Doesn't care about working with Iran, doesn't bring them back into the fold if there's a fold to be brought in, doesn't want to do peace in the world and just engage commerce-wise. The United States imposes new sanctions over missile tests. The United States imposes the sanctions of someone testing the arms to defend of self-defense. Now, if it's going to do that against Iran, how much chance do you have in the United States that it's going to honor your right to bear arms for your self-defense? U.S. has imposed fresh sanctions on Iran companies and individuals over recent ballistic missile tests. The new sanctions prevent 11 entities and individuals linked to missile program from using the United States banking system. Interesting. That seems to be the global system, doesn't it? So, as soon as Iran does what they want, the bully and brute United States comes down hard on sanctions because Iran has declared themselves a sovereign space, and they're going to do what they need to do. That includes self-defense. I'm just going to ask you again. What do you think your rights are compared to where the United States is going to deny and sanction Iran for wanting to improve its self-defense? What do you think your rights are where you decide you want to improve yours? Or even have any? How's that? Well, you have the evidence of what's going on. There's no right for it. There's no authority for it. The judiciary has no authority to question the extent of the Second Amendment, and yet they have and do, and there's been crickets. There hasn't been the mass uprising. Oh, there's the rattling of the breaches are pushed back and forth as everyone's oiling them. But that's about it. Nothing substantive. And why? Because we all know, victim of Obama's first drone strike, I am the living example of what drones are. Who's the power, folks? Well, that's a trick question, isn't it? Certainly not the crickets, but when the crickets shut up and go to action, they will be. But until then, Obama and his drones could be. And this is the son of who was standing in the area when that other guy got bombed by a drone. There was a United States citizen without due process gets executed. And that's okay. And I heard crickets. Fahim Qureshi was 14 when a drone attack on his home left him with horrific injuries, several family members dead, and his dream for a future in tatters. Fahim Qureshi's uncles sat with their neighbors, chatting, cracking jokes, and sipping tea in their family's lounge for male guests. Qureshi, almost 14, stood nearby, bored and restless, thinking about what he could go do to the nearby playground when he could go there and he could play with his other friends in badminton and cricket. It had been a long day. Friday prayers, a food shopping errand on his mother's behest, hosting but also happy occasion as people stopped by to welcome an uncle from North Waziristan in tribal Pakistan. Then they heard a sound like a plane taking off. About 2 seconds later, the missile punched a hole through this lounge. Qureshi remembers feeling his body was on fire. He ran outside, wanting to throw water on his face, but his priority was escape. The boy could not see. Anyway, this is what they have in store. They don't care. You don't have rights. This is what the bully in the block does. They don't want you up. They don't want to help you. They don't want to give you a decent way. And if you think, and this is done to an American citizen, if you think that the United States is going to help you, or if you think that they're not going to take every advantage against you, you really have another thing coming. And if you think that the advancement of this global governance that you find that's going on is going away because you wish it away or because you think you have a different philosophy in mind, I'm going to just have to at least strongly suggest you're in error. You're going to have to somehow work a deal with this and deal with it. What's the deal you work with it? That you take the responsibility that it takes in order to start where you can and move where you must. This global control is about death and destruction and monetary consequences that are imposed upon your way to get stuff, your production, and the consumption of it. Remember, the system is able to make refuse and make money at it on top of that. You can't. This is one of the distinctions between inanimate corporations and your flesh and blood body. But don't rely on that. The system, the occupier, doesn't look at all that. The system only looks at that as a beast of burden, as a human resource. Pope Francis raises the stakes for Catholics unwilling to accept change. If you didn't think this guy was a change agent and not an actual pope, but he was the pope. He is the pope. That was this is all about. He is in the background actually providing the basis of the so-called moral authority to advance this. Remember, Obama, the guy who droned an American citizen without due process and legitimized it, is the same guy that said that this pope has moral authority over the world, who now says that you followers in the Catholic Church, you're going to agree to the change and like it. Hope and change, hope and change. Where have you heard this, folks? Why is this Pope coming up with it? Has to be at least a question in your mind if you never thought about it before. Why the consistency? As if readying the church for the coming change. Pope Francis has significantly raised the stakes. Boy, if that wasn't so obvious a statement in this story telling you what's coming down, I don't know what else is. That's probably the most obvious statement I could ever read coming from someone who's supposed to keep it transparent. As if readying the church for coming change. Folks, it's been changed. Pope Francis has significantly raised the stakes. The stakeholders, folks, is all in here. Raising stakes is raising those that are going to be rising up inside your system against you. Raising stakes for the for those apprehensive about the possibility that he has new innovations in store for the church. A Vatican Radio summary of his homily in January 18th reads, quote, "Christians who say it's always been done that way and stop there have hearts closed to the surprises of the Holy Spirit. They are idolaters and rebels who will never arrive at the fullness of the truth." Well, what truth, folks? He's a felon. It's his truth. It's the earthly truth. That you live in an open-air prison, and if you don't like it, he's going to call you names. You heretic. I don't hear much different here. But as we go on, and I won't read more, for those of you that have eyes to see and ears to hear it, you start reading this, you start listening to what you're told, you're going to find everything in it that is the new governance condition upon us. This guy is ushering that in as the moral authority. Do not underestimate what this means. He will, if you know what you're looking at, he contorts and adulterates how the faith of the Christian faith actually works. He resides things that are supposed to be the divine in the things worldly. And I've told you, one of the commandments was, thou shalt not commit adultery. And I've told you, that wasn't about, actually, in my mind, men and women, though that shouldn't happen. That looks to me more like your life is much better when you don't adulterate the principles in your life. And this guy is a master at it. And so if you don't understand how this is coming down, another notice to you, the followers, the flock will change and they will like it, or they'll be deemed to be the heretics. And don't forget the 2017 confirmation of the end of the war, the Protestant war. The Protestants lost. Remember, that's going to be finalized on 2017 when all of the Protestant denominations are brought back into the fold. And it's going to be the change we want, the financial servitude, underneath a moral authority. It's right here, if you kind of know what you're looking for. It always fascinates me that it continues to be here and this consistent. Pope Francis, countries that take in refugees must change. What did I tell you? They force something on you and you will change whether you like it or not. It's the future we want. The future the world economics wants. It doesn't matter what you think. The future changes because you're imposed. If you don't have a cell wall, you can be invaded by a foreign host, a foreign parasite. You become the host. This was critical to understand why you definitely need an immigration policy. You at least be able to check potential disease coming in or out of your nation, potential disease in the way of unprincipled influence that alters the very nature of your whole system and drives you into places that no one thought, because you're no longer in control now. You're actually in democracy at that point. And I won't go into all that because that's going to bring up a whole other discussion. It's why the military calls what we live under democracy. It's why it's described as democracy. There's another word that it means that people are all enamored over, but I won't talk about it right now. There's lots of proofs for lots of things. So, Pope Francis says, you refugee acceptors, remember that's in Agenda 2030, you will change. And he's telling the faithful, you will change and you will like it. Otherwise, you're a rebel. You're an idolater. Doesn't matter, he's an adulterer, but that's okay. Doesn't matter. Or felon. And this is the world they want to send you to. We hear about Flint, Michigan. We tell the Detroitification of the world and the demolishing of all that's going on. Desperate to slumber in Delhi, homeless encounter a sleep mafia. You make a buck on anything, I guess, in this world. India is where this is. You think you're too far from this. Remember what happens in the Detroitification. Look at what's happening up there in Michigan. How close we all are. Don't forget about all the people that went homeless when this 2008-2009 housing debacle was they flicked that switch, and how many people had to go homeless on that. I don't know where all those people went, folks. Where'd they go? But this is what starts to happen when midnight approaches in Old Delhi and the thick freezing fog settles over the city. The quilt walla, Farooq Khan sits at his corner watching the market for his service come to life. They shuffle up one by one, men desperate to sleep. The bicycle rickshaw pullers peeling one of his 20 rupee to 30 cent quilts off of a pile, folds their bodies into strange angles on the 4-foot seats of their vehicles. The day laborers curl their bodies on the frigid sidewalk, sometimes spooned against each other men for warmth. Those who cannot afford to pay, Mr. Khan builds a fire out of plastic, if necessary, and so they can crouch over the fire and waiting for the night to be over. Does any a city have more stratified sleep economy than wintertime Delhi? Understand that sleep economy, they made a whole industry over your inability to go find sleep, someplace to rest your head and be safe. How close, folks? The filmmaker Shanak Sen, who spent 2 years researching the city's sleep vendors for a documentary series of sleep, discovered a sprawling gray market that has taken shape around the city's vast unmet need for shelter. In some places it breeds what he calls a sleep mafia, who controls who sleeps, where, for how long, and what quality sleep they get. Enough said for that. This is just what happens, folks. I'm not making that up. Didn't know anything about it. It's on the news. It's telling you this is what happens in places where this is a condition. Homeless men. So here we are, the attack on men and what happens to men through these societies who can't cope or are in positions of accepting governance, and their policies are not set up to do so. They speak in equality and they act in diversity, which is monoculture, the one we want, the economic one we want, not you and me, the world economics condition. This is the moral authority putting this on the world, how this works. Well, where's Mother Teresa when you need her, right? No, he's going to come in and talk about how he's going to change your life and you're going to like it, instead of running over to Delhi and making a mission to give free beds to people as a charity and work out amongst the people how they're going to pay for that in the charitable side. No, he can't do that. He's got to go into the first world nations and beat them about the head and shoulders about how the change they want is come upon them and they better like it. The same guy that agrees with this climate change stuff and why we all supposedly went to fluorescent light bulbs. And here we are, folks. See, it all went too fast. See, we have a capacity in us to make better when we're given the chance, and we're not under the delusions or underneath the bad ideas of bad information. They moved on these fluorescent bulbs. No one really understands that they actually have mercury in them. They still need the miner to have these bulbs. So when they break a bulb, they're actually polluting if you think mercury is a poison and you're polluting the earth, well, EPA says so it must be so. Carbon dioxide is a poison, so the Supreme Court says it must be so. They have the authority to be the God of the world to declare what's a poison and what's not. So they have. But mercury's in these bulbs. They're not really that. They're more efficient than an old incandescent, but they're not really that good. Then we went to LEDs. But guess what? They outlawed a lot of the incandescent bulbs. But they did this so fast. They did it on these policy agendas that are not really thought. There's no brain, no intellect behind them. There's no capacity. There's no thought to allow people to adapt themselves and the things they need into a better way. There's not even a suggestion to get us there. No, there's the imposition outwardly, external to us, with inward support for an agenda, not creativity. Researchers at the MIT are publicizing that they have fixed the incandescent light bulb with a brilliant improvement. They have wrapped the interior filament in a crystal glass that both bounces light and contains heat. It recycles energy in a way that addresses the main complaint against Edison's bulb. It burns too much energy for the light it produces. This thing is even more efficient than an LED. And so here we have the banning of a light bulb now, a special design that we can't go back to because an agenda, the future we want, wants to make a future that they want instead of the future that we want. They don't allow innovation. They talk about innovation, but they don't allow innovation. And you have to understand how this works. This is the regulation of government gone too far. Now, you don't think a light bulb's very much, but people want light bulbs that are incandescent. In Germany, they have a whole underground black market about it. They actually called them heat balls. They didn't call them light bulbs. You can't sell a incandescent light bulb. They called them heat balls, and people hoard them. The whole world's a market, folks. And there's a lot of people to circumvent, hack their way through hackneyed laws and legislations. That's another creativity that is underestimated by the government. But while they get us down, while they get us going in the wrong direction, and we never really rise to the top. And I think we deserve better. They impose this world on you of what they want to do because they have decided, and they're all based on no foundation. We found this story because this is integral with how you consume and what you're going to consume, the feed they give you, but it was analysis from the GMO side supporting their place by finding that anti-GMO science was wrong. And I went and I listed, what caught my attention was the list they provided. So I wanted to point, even when you look at their own information, and fairly addressing a problem with the anti-GMO science not being science and the failures, this GMO supporter identifying this identifies a fraud in other areas by the same list, and they don't speak to that. Anti-GMO fraud scandal deepens. Professor Federico Infascelli's papers were called into question, as we reported Monday, when the figures from his 2010 paper were reused in 2013 and 2015 paper in completely different experiments. The figures represented gel electrophoresis of DNA from animals he had fed either GMO soy or non-GMO soy, in which he attempted to assert differences that most scientists doubted exist. He had been accused of serious scientific misconduct. Let's get to the point because I'm running out of time. The conclusions of the report damning these studies said that it was data was digitally deleted, figures were cropped to eliminate data being spliced in, data completely fabricated. Well, let me just drop off there because that wasn't obvious. I want you to now think, what about climate change? These GMO people are giving us a list of what makes bad science studies, and I started to see climate change all over this stuff. The so-called science behind the fraud of global warming. Figures were created by moving data between lanes in the images, lanes being duplicated, bands being deleted, software deletion of data. I looked at that. I think 90% of it sits to represent what we see as science in the climate change. And also in other, like pharma and bio, all this stuff is sitting there. So if you want, I got the Blogcaster. If you want a list of what makes invalid science, here's a list for you. Sick 'em, folks. Take it and run. Destroy the system with it. Flood the system with some basis. See, in this case, I could throw this list in and destroy all science now, can't I? Now they're not moving at all, aren't they? Because the rules require that there has to be some scientific basis. So now I've taken a weakness, something they use as a strength to try and promote to you as strength. I've taken it and turned it into a weakness. That's what I would call the Aikido move right here. You just take what they think is a strength and turn it to their weakness. It's right here. I don't even have to go far. So this list, I could invalidate, just on the point, I could invalidate just from that list, the thing the moral authority of the world says we have to change too. And it's our social mortgage and the carbon we now create and the footprint we make. So they devolve down, they start explaining to us how they're doing it to us, they give us the things we could use, and they take away from us what we need, they They are controlling production and consumption. The GMOs is honest for they create feed, not food. I don't want to. I've discussed a little bit about that, but here's the pressure. Again, Michigan, a focus point for what comes on to the world and in practice. Now, I guess Oregon and I think Massachusetts are pioneer police states for policy. This is the implementation of how they're going to control production. Ruling means Michigan residents effectively lose right to keep chickens, bees, and other small animals. Michigan's residents lost their, quote, right to farm this week thanks to a new ruling by the Michigan Commission of Agriculture and Rural Development. Remember, rural is the urban-rural divide. It's the divide that was fabricated between the rural producers and property owners and the urbanites, the city centers that they're stacking and packing. So I'm just going to leave it right there. They in Michigan, the immense intellect of Michigan have lost their right to farm. It wasn't much of a right, folks, if that's the case. But here's the point I wanted to develop for you. There is this so-called right to farm. The state had no right to intrude. In fact, it's appurtenant the right that conveyed and disposed the soil to the private parties who now have it. You have to go back through the patent to get at it. You can't do it through a deed and your home and all this other stuff. You have to get back through what your land, appurtenant rights to the land were. This law on its face is unconstitutional. It's a breach of fiduciary duty of the state, the obligation and duty for the state to protect that in the land and to produce for ourselves. What's the point? You see, the states are involved with advancing sustainable development, international plunder and control through Agenda 2030 of your source of production for your food in favor of their feed. So those people in Michigan, get it, folks. You got to step up, find your property rights. You got to find out how they were conveyed, and you got to get to the point where you can go after those as felons in the government who thought they could take the so-called right to farm that was appurtenant to your use of the land for the farm. Those rights never go away. Well, unless you give make a conservation contract. Conservation is non-use. See, this law, the taking away the right to farm, is now a waste of the land where it was producing before. But you'll have to find the words. I just throw that out there. Obviously, this is no good, and don't know what more to say. People have to step up, or it is taken from you, isn't it? Thank you for tuning in today. Thank you for all you contribute to RealLibertyMedia.com. The servers for the place, the blogcaster, and what Grimner does, and worldtruth.org, and Grammy Mary, and the servers, the Spreaker account that goes out of there. You can help pay for that or donate for that, or any time you might be able to content you can put toward making a conversation on those forums. UCY.tv, thank you, Jules. And the broadcasters, the terrestrial broadcasters, appreciate all your help keeping the word going out. Pass the file out, the podcast. It'll go up in a couple hours. And yes, I do take a lot of time for the broadcasters, so I appreciate it. You get a lot more information.